Today, I will tell you 3 scary van life stories. Story 1. The passenger that wasn't there. Ethan had been living the van life dream for 6 months, documenting his travels on social media. He had seen deserts that stretched forever, forests dense with mist, and roads so empty they felt like the edge of the world. But now, something was wrong. It started subtly. At night, when he lay in his converted camper van, he would hear soft shuffling noises like fabric sliding against fabric. Then came the quiet, measured breathing. At first, he dismissed it, maybe just the wind against the vents or the echoes of his own breath in the confined space. But one night, as he lay in his sleeping bag, he distinctly felt pressure near his feet, like someone was sitting there. Bolting upright, he shone his flashlight around the van. Nothing, just the same cramped but cozy interior. His little stove, the stack of books he barely touched, and his hiking boots neatly tucked by the door. He let out a shaky breath and convinced himself it was in his head. But it wasn't. The next morning, he set out early, trying to shake the eerie feeling that had settled in his gut. His plan was to head toward the mountains, but that night, as he lay in bed, he heard it again, breathing. This time it was right next to his ear. He sprang up, heart hammering, and turned on every light in the van. Nothing. His hand shook as he checked the locks. Secure. He wasn't crazy. He couldn't be. The next night, he set up his phone to record. In the morning, he played back the footage. The first few hours were uneventful, just him tossing and turning. But at 3:14 a.m., the screen went black for exactly 12 seconds. When the video resumed, his sleeping bag was unzipped, open like someone had climbed inside. Determined to get answers, Ethan searched every inch of the van, under the bed, in the cabinets, even beneath the floor panels. That's when he found it. A hidden compartment near the back, sealed shut with old nails. He pried it open, revealing a dark space barely big enough for a person to hide. Inside, he found an old, rotting blanket and a notebook. The pages were filled with scrawled messages. He knows I see him. He waits until I sleep. If you're reading this, it's already too late. A soft breath brushed against the back of his neck. Story 2. Time Lost Van. Ethan had always been good with directions. He had spent 6 months on the road, navigating with ease, rarely needing a GPS. But today, something was wrong. He had planned a simple route through the mountains, a road he had mapped out in advance. But after hours of driving, he was still seeing the same signs, the same turns, the same gas station. No matter how many times he changed course, he always ended up back where he started. Annoyed, he pulled into the gas station, an old, rusted relic of the past, with a single attendant standing behind the counter. The man looked up, his face pale, his eyes dark hollows. Ethan approached with an uneasy feeling. "Hey, where exactly am I?" he asked, holding up his phone. "My GPS is acting up." The attendant gave him a slow, knowing look. "You got someone with you?" Ethan frowned. "No, just me." The man wiped his hands on an old rag. "Then who's been riding with you?" A chill ran down Ethan's spine. He turned abruptly, scanning the van through the dusty glass of the station's window. It was empty. It had to be. Laughing awkwardly, he waved the comment off, paid for his gas, and left. But as he started the van and glanced in the rearview mirror, he saw something he shouldn't have. A shape, a dark figure, sitting silently in the back. The breath caught in his throat, his hands clenching the wheel as he turned around in panic. There was nothing there. His heart pounded against his ribs. He forced himself to breathe, to keep driving, to rationalize. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe he was exhausted. Hours passed. The road stretched on, endlessly, like the world outside of time. The radio crackled, station after station, fading into static until finally, Ethan, his own name, spoken in a whisper through the speakers. He jerked the dial off, hands white-knuckled on the wheel. "I'm just tired," he muttered. "Just need sleep." But the night never ended. He kept driving, watching the sun hover motionless on the horizon, never setting, never rising. The clock on the dashboard stopped ticking. His phone refused to turn on, and every time he glanced at the rearview mirror, the figure was closer. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He slammed on the brakes, jumped out, and ran. The cold air burned his lungs as he sprinted down the road, screaming for help. But the van followed. Its headlights flickered, its engine roared, rolling toward him as if it had a mind of its own. And then, silence. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was back in the driver's seat. Hands on the wheel, foot on the gas. The road stretched endlessly ahead. The gas station loomed in the distance. And in the rearview mirror, the dark figure sat in the passenger seat. This time it spoke. Drive. Story 3. Why I gave up van life. When I was 26, I set out to explore the country in a beat-up van I'd rigged up myself. For 4 months, I roamed free, no rent, no bills. I scavenged meals from the bins behind burger joints and grocery stores. When the gas gauge dipped low, I'd strum my banjo on busy sidewalks until my hat brimmed with coins. A cheap gym pass kept me clean, and in every small town I rolled into, I'd stumble across a campfire circled by fellow wanderers swapping stories under the stars. The real trick, though, was finding a safe place to crash each night. Local rules varied. Some towns banned parking on quiet streets. Others roped off public lots or wooded areas. What was left often felt too open, too remote, too eerie. Spots where you'd squint at the shadowy outline of a pickup truck idling nearby and wonder who, or what, was behind the wheel. Places where every snapped twig or distant chuckle made your skin crawl. Around those campfires, talk always circled back to the same thing. Where could you park without losing your nerve? One humid evening, I was at a riverside gathering in northern Georgia, watching the sky burn orange and dreading another sleepless night behind the wheel. A wiry kid with a shaved head and a patched-up jacket bumped my shoulder. "Yo, check this out," they muttered, tugging at a tangle of necklaces. "Got a map here. Prime spots, marked in blue." They thrust a massive, creased map into my hands. Its paper stained a deep, smoky brown, dotted with bright sapphire points. I've crashed at a few. Chill vibes, no hassle. Just weird stuff, you know? You'll see. They flashed a crooked grin and melted into the crowd as shouts rang out. Red and blue lights flickered through the trees. Cops. The party scattered, and I gunned it toward the nearest blue dot. It led me to a gravel clearing beside a squat brick building, an old storage shed, maybe tucked off a winding road near Lakeview, Alabama. A dim bulb buzzed above its chained-up door. The place wasn't empty, but it didn't scream occupied either. Fields stretched out in every direction, silent and still. It was perfect. I pulled the van around back, nestled under a cluster of pines, and let the rustling needles lull me to sleep. I woke up needing to stretch my legs. The dashboard clock glowed 1:47. The night was dead quiet. No crickets, no breeze. As I stepped out, something shifted inside that shed. A wet, gurgling sound, like a mop sloshing a bucket, but heavier, bigger. I froze, straining to hear. It slammed against the door once, twice, the chain rattling like it might snap. Then came a low, mournful groan, so raw and human it turned my stomach. I bolted back to the van and locked the doors, heart pounding. Morning came with chirping sparrows and golden light. The shed sat there, locked tight, innocent as ever. Had I imagined it? Compared to the usual risks, sketchy drifters, nosy rangers, or the odd raccoon rummaging through my trash, a few strange noises were nothing. I shook it off, spent the day fishing with some folks I met at a dock, then buskied outside a diner in town. The tips bought me a hot meal and enough fuel to aim for the next blue dot. This one was a shuttered roadside stand off a lonely stretch near Crestwood, Tennessee. Jeb's Fresh Catch, the faded sign boasted, though the lot was overgrown with weeds. A chipped plaster statue loomed over it. A goofy, 10-foot-tall kid in overalls hoisting a net, its paint peeling to reveal a blank, staring face. Something about those hollow eyes unnerved me, but I just splurged on a plate of catfish and a cold soda. I could handle a little weirdness for some rest. I parked out of sight from the road, kicked back, and dozed off. 2:13 blinked on the clock when a sharp tap, tap, tap jolted me awake. Rain pattered on the roof. I hesitated, then peeked out. An old woman stood there, her face shadowed under a wide-brimmed hat, rain dripping off her coat. She tapped again, harder, with something metal. I cracked the window an inch. "Hey there," she chirped, her voice too bright, her lips barely parting. "I need some bait." I blinked, confused. "This is the catch shop, right? I need my catch." Her shout made me flinch. Then I saw it, her fingers clawing through the gap, gripping a rusty hook. I slammed the van into reverse. She didn't stumble, just stood there, staring as I peeled out, the statue's blank gaze following me into the dark. I didn't stop until I hit a glowing truck stop an hour away. The normalcy of it, flickering neon, stale coffee, a bored clerk mopping the floor, felt like a lifeline. I grabbed a candy bar to steady my nerves and shuffled to the counter. "Hey friend," the clerk beamed. Same voice, same stiff stuff mouth. It was her, the old woman. "Thought I'd see you here." Her teeth gleamed, too big, too square, like they belonged to something else. I stumbled back. "I just saw you. How? You're not on your highways anymore, friend. These are ours." She grinned wider, a bead of spit sliding down her chin. I ran to the van, fumbling for my phone. No bars. The map app showed nothing but endless forest. Tap, tap, tap. She was at the window again, hook gleaming. I tried to peel out, then felt the van sag. The tires. She'd gotten to them. The tapping turned to pounding. "Leave me alone," I yelled, and she was gone. The truck stop lights blinked out. I sat there, panting, until a hook punched through the roof, missing my shoulder by inches. "Don't you want a snack, friend?" she cackled, stabbing again. I floored it, rims screeching on pavement, and swerved hard. A shape tumbled through my headlights. No thud, just silence. The van was dying fast. I grabbed the smoky map and traced a shaky finger along its odd, twisting lines. If I was reading it right, a turnoff to Silver Hollow was close. From there, a blue dot might get me out of whatever this was. The engine sputtered out just as the exit sign loomed ahead. I packed my essentials and hiked into the night, headlamp cutting through the void. The air was too still, the trees too uniform, like props on a stage. The sign for Silver Hollow 8 shimmered oddly, its edges rippling if I stared too long. I kept moving. Soon, a faint glow appeared. A rest stop, all concrete and flickering bulbs. A rusted camper sat out front. My blue dot? I checked the camper first. Its door hung loose, the inside a mess of torn cushions, a cracked radio, and a mannequin arm dangling from a light fixture, tangled in a faded scarf. I backed out fast and headed for the building. A door groaned shut behind me. La la, la la la, someone was here. Footsteps, a sloshing, dragging sound. I ducked into a restroom stall, heart hammering. Bang! A stall door flew open. Bang! Through the crack, I saw muddy boots and a soap pant leg. The door to my stall rattled, then tore free. You okay in there, buddy? Don't tell me you're lost too. A grizzled janitor stared down at me, mop in hand. I nearly laughed with relief. Outside, the rest stop buzzed with normalcy. Vending machines, flyers, a family stretching their legs. Then I was shoved against the wall. 2 cops pinned me, snatching the map from my pocket. A lanky guy in a gray suit stepped forward. "What's this to you?" he asked, holding up the map. Spots to camp, places nobody checks." "Places nobody checks, huh?" He smirked. "Too close for comfort, kid." He pulled out a notebook. "Answer straight. Looked in a mirror lately? Shared a drink with anything weird? Who's the president? Picture your dad's face." The questions were bizarre, relentless. Finally, he nodded to the cops, and they uncuffed me. "I tell you to steer clear of this place after dark," he said, "but I reckon you're done with that life." They piled into a bland sedan and vanished down the road. I haven't slept in a van since.